All right, so I had to do this video real quickly. For the people who said Charles Kirk wasn't racist, here's a video that shows proof that Charles Kirk was racist.
And I think the Republican Party lacks a consistency in that. So my question to you is going to be, if I name these three names, could you tell me if they're guilty or not guilty? Okay, so the first one's going to be Carmelo Anthony.
Based on the facts available, absolutely guilty.
Okay. Now, O.J. Simpson.
Oh, absolutely guilty.
Okay. George Zimmerman.
No, self-defense. He was acquitted by a jury of his peers.
Now, if we're going based on facts, what makes the Carmelo Anthony and the George Zimmerman case different?
George Zimmerman was hunted at night by Trayvon Martin at 2 a.m., and the stand your ground law allows you to stand your ground up against people that wish you harm. Carmelo Anthony, with that Austin Metcalf, who he murdered in cold blood, said, "Don't touch me" at a high school track meet, said one thing he didn't like, took out a knife, and then brutally stabbed him to death. Those are not moral equivalents. George Zimmerman and Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony are on different planets morally. Don't ever compare them. That is incredible moral confusion.
But
And I thought you'd be smarter than that.
So, in this video, you clearly see him asked about three people, whether they are guilty or not. Carmelo Anthony, the black guy, black kid accused of a stabbing, O.J. Simpson, and George Zimmerman. He said that O.J. Simpson was guilty, but he said George Zimmerman wasn't guilty. He said George Zimmerman was acquitted by a jury of his peers.
George Zimmerman.
No, self-defense. He was acquitted by a jury of his peers.
Now,
Well, so was O.J. Simpson. And then if you watch the full video, because people always say, oh, watch the full video in context. Oh, and for the people who like O.J. Simpson was found guilty of one crime with the Vegas situation, and then he was found not guilty for the previous crime with the double homicide in L.A. In that video, they're talking about the double homicide that O.J. Simpson was in fact found not guilty of. So you see the contradiction right there. This is why, and people say, why do you say Charles Kirk debated people who weren't prepared? Because you should be able to quickly call out that contradiction. Furthermore, he says in that clip that George Zimmerman was hunted by Trayvon Martin at 2 a.m. in the morning. First of all, again, people not being prepared. Trayvon Martin was killed at 7:16 p.m. 7:16 p.m. So how is anyone hunting anyone at 2 a.m.? First of all, and then second of all, hunted has a definition. Words have meaning. The person being pursued or searched for was Trayvon Martin. We all heard the phone call, the 911 phone call, where they told George Zimmerman, oh, you're about to follow him? We don't need you to do that. We know that Trayvon Martin was running from him. His friend said he was running, and George Zimmerman said out his own mouth, oh, this kid's running. George Zimmerman knew that Trayvon Martin was a kid. We heard him say that. He was a high school kid. He was 17 years of age. When George Zimmerman was asked on the 911 call, oh, what's the description? He said he appears to be a black male, a teen. So he knew he was a teenager. George Zimmerman used what he knew to his advantage. He was 29 years old, 5'8", 200 pounds. Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old kid. He had just turned 17. His birthday is February 5th. He was killed on February 26th. He was a junior in high school, 17-year-old kid. He was afraid and he ran while he was being hunted by George Zimmerman, who knew about the stand your ground law. He was taught it. His college professor said that. Furthermore, Kirk bringing up the stand your ground law doesn't even apply here, because in court, he didn't even use stand your ground as a part of his defense. He just used a classic self-defense. Look that up. He didn't use stand your ground law. He used a classic self-defense. So this is what Charles Kirk would always do. He would use language like that. Oh, Trayvon Martin hunted George Zimmerman. He would always use language and then skew data and facts to support whatever narrative he was trying to present that would make black people look worse. This is what I'm talking about. This is why he's a racist. You cannot, this video is the only proof I need. This is the only proof I need that he was racist. Oh, O.J. Simpson, guilty, even though he was found not guilty by a jury of his peers. But then George Zimmerman, not guilty. Oh, on the basis that he was found not guilty by a jury of his peers. Are you kidding me? Do you even know? So, and then he's saying, like, if you watch the video in full context, his argument is that, like, oh yeah, those detectives and stuff, they did a bad job. Yeah, because you had racists like Mark Furman, who was the lead detective, who just so happened to find the glove. If you look at that case, they say that the murder, the O.J. Simpson case, they said that the murder happened, the double homicide happened around 10:35 to 10:45. O.J. Simpson answered the phone, answered the doorbell at 11 o'clock. And he came down shortly after that. So you're telling me around 20 minutes, if that homicide happened at 10:30, they say 10:35 to 10:45, he had to travel home, which is an 8-minute drive. Then he had to shower and had to come down with his bags packed from 10:35 to 11. If you say 10:30 to 11, he answered, that's 30 minutes. He cleaned up, came down dressed from a double homicide and only had a nip on his finger. And then they only found the glove, which it doesn't even make sense that they found the glove at his place. The glove was tight enough for him to drive home with it on. Then he is walking down the back way where they found it, and he takes it off, or it falls off, and he decides to leave it there, even though he was smart enough to get rid of all the other things that he was wearing. They never found the murder weapon. They didn't find his pants, his shirt. They didn't find none of that. But he's going to leave a glove, a bloody glove, that just so happened Mark Furman found both, with no one around. The racist cop, who when asked under oath, did you plant any evidence in this case? He said, I plead the fifth. But Charlie Kirk wants us to believe that, oh, without a doubt, if they didn't make all these mistakes, O.J. Simpson is guilty. He was found not guilty by a jury of his peers, which, according to you, just like George Zimmerman, if you're doing apples and apples, he's not guilty. So I want someone to watch this. A 17-year-old kid, if a 17-year-old white male was being stalked by someone and followed, then ran, and then was shot and killed, would he say that 17-year-old white kid was hunting the person? That's literally not true. That doesn't fall under the definition of hunting. He literally ran. Then he confronted him, like, yeah, why are you following me? Again, George Zimmerman knew about stand your ground law. He knew he had a firearm on him, and he knew the chances was that this teenager didn't have a firearm on him because he's a teenager. So even in Florida, it's a good chance that a 17-year-old is not walking around with a handgun. So I want all you goofies to watch this. Tell me he's not racist. And if you deny that, then you're just simply a racist yourself, or you're a coon.